Okay, so I've been kind of losing my mind. I've been working on a Frankenstein video for a while. I have like 10 pages of a script written, and it's been breaking me to refine that script. And I just decided, fuck it. You're allowed to say that in the beginning of YouTube videos now, right? One, because to try to present myself as like super polished and super organized about this, it would be dishonest because I am not well. This will, if it's not clear, it will become clear. And two, I'm not saying it is not possible, but I am not capable of organizing my thoughts about Frankenstein in a way that is not going to be jumping around. Because that was, I mean, in addition to the volume of like information that I was trying to cram into the script, I also was like, let's organize this by theme and topic, which is more or less kind of what I usually do when I've got like a structured video. I'm like, well, let's talk about what is this book? What is an adaptation? What makes a successful adaptation? Okay, so like, what is this book really about? What is this film really about? And like break it down that way. And as soon as I started trying to do that, I was like, okay, but like it's not clear why this is important in theme if I haven't explained the plot here and how it diverges. So, okay, scratch that. Let's organize it chronologically. Let's go through these plots like, you know, like in sequence. But I was like, okay, but no, but as soon as I start doing that, I'm trying to point out why this is important, and I can't really do that because I haven't set up yet why thematically this is like super important. You should like really pay attention to that. And then I was like, let's break it out by character, but the characters are all interconnected. So I'm like, well, I can't really talk about this part of this character yet because I haven't, the next part is about the next character. So it won't make sense until I've covered both characters. So I'm like, I need to cover them simultaneously, which brings us back to let's do it chronologically. But then we need to like emphasize the themes. So let's do it by theme. Anyway, here we are. I hope you will take for what it's worth this more scattered presentation. But here we go. Let's start with I love Frankenstein. When I say I love Frankenstein, I mean I love Frankenstein. These are all the editions of Frankenstein I have. And these are books I bought that are like retellings or related to Frankenstein that's literally the only reason I bought them. I have this pretty one. I have this pretty one. This is my favorite one. And it is the least impressive looking because this edition is the 1818 edition as well as the 1816 edition. And most, like, I think most of us read in school the 1831 version. I have read them all multiple times. And this is my favorite because it includes the original text that Mary Shelley wrote in 1816 before Percy Shelley got his grubby little hands all over it. So you can see what she really wrote. So I love that. And I love that you can compare it because it has both texts. And what I did a couple years ago was looked at the text that has 1816 with notes on what is 1818 editions while listening to the audiobook for the 1831 one and flipping through it, so I was comparing all three in real time. Don't recommend that as like a first time read through, but otherwise I do recommend doing that. I think it was fun. I have the Chiltern edition. Is that how you say it? Chiltern? Anyway, I have this, oh, I'm missing one. I don't know where it is right now. But anyway, I have this like watercolor painted one. And my brother for my birthday got me this one, which is stunning and is printed on black paper. It is dark mode. The most appropriate book to have in dark mode, let's be real. And then I do also have like a re-release of the illustrated edition from, what year was it? I don't know, it's a pretty well-known illustrated edition. And dagnabbit, where is it? Okay, well, as soon as I'm done with this video, I'm gonna go find it. That's bothering me. It has stunning illustrations, highly recommend. And then The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, which I actually do recommend, and actually I'm gonna talk about this. Like, this isn't just a prop to demonstrate my love of Frankenstein. I actually want to talk about this later. So just put a pin in that. And then the Mary Shelley Club, which has nothing to do with Frankenstein. And has very little to do with Mary Shelley, but I bought this and I read it exclusively because it had the name Mary Shelley on it. That's why I was interested in it. It ended up being an okay book. It's fine, like, but it's nothing to do with Frankenstein. Anyway, so yeah, I love Frankenstein. My scripted version of the I love Frankenstein was more along the lines of like, I have heard different versions. I am not an unbiased observer. I'm a tough audience to please, blah, blah, blah. Which, like, yeah. I'm a tough audience to please. Fully admit that. I am like the toughest audience to please. Although, not really. I would say the toughest audience to please is somebody who is like me in their love of Frankenstein, but is unlike me in their ability to conceive of and appreciate something that could diverge from the original, because as much as you may not want to believe me, as much as you may not believe me, I am actually pretty extremely open to adaptations of books, be they classics or new books or whatever, adaptations of Shakespeare, adaptations of whatever, diverging pretty extremely from their source material, as long as it's to a purpose. And again, I tried to explain this much more like collegiately, academically sounding in my script that I'm looking at right now. Yeah, I have my script in front of me, so in case, you know, there's something, I don't want to miss anything, any of the amazing points I was making. But yeah, this is a lie. I'm not this calm about this. But yeah, so like there's a lot of movies and books, books meaning like retellings, that I like or appreciate. In fact, you know, Exhibit A, Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, which again I do want to talk about later when we talk about the character of Elizabeth, which, boy, got a few pages on that alone. I, just like with my opinion or my attitude towards adaptation is very similar to my attitude and opinion about historical accuracy or anachronism or things like that. Which is to say that I don't object to it out of hand, changes or messing with that. I object to it being done willy-nilly. I think I even put willy-nilly in my script because I couldn't think of a better way to say that. There probably is a better way to say that. But when it's, well, maybe there is a reason, but I watching it, I consuming it, cannot identify what they were thinking with this. Like, I don't know what was the vision behind making those changes. If I can understand what the vision was, I may also not like it if I think that was a bad vision. But that's slightly better than no vision. So having no vision is the worst. Having a vision that is bad is less worse. And then obviously like having, making huge changes with a clear and interesting vision is ideal. And can often be better than an extremely faithful and loyal adaptation that is like slavishly loyal and won't make any changes even when they might benefit the pacing or might benefit it in terms of adapting it from one medium to another, because film is a different medium. So the idea that you could have a completely loyal adaptation is in some sense to me absurd, because just read the book. At that point, why are we adapting it? So, you know, Lord of the Rings is a great example, one of my favorite examples of like, you've been true to most of the storyline and the characters and everything, like most of like the facts of what happens, you've been true to that for the most part. And the changes you've made have mostly been in service of this is a film, not a book, or this is going to be shorter, we have to cut things, or combining characters, things like that, or again, emphasizing things that don't work so well in a book. Action scenes don't work so well in a book, they work much better on screen, etc., things like that. That's fine. I think a lot of people over the years, especially in hindsight, have been like, Lord of the Rings is the gold standard, even though at the time purists were like, oh, it's totally ruined the original. We, in retrospect, are like, we didn't know how good we had it, because Peter Jackson, where you may not agree with every choice he made, there is a sense of like, but he like gets it, he gets the vibe, gets the tone, gets the thematic messaging that's going on in Lord of the Rings, and he's been at the very least true to that, even if you don't agree with like how he's made changes to the plot or whatever. So, going into Frankenstein, the film by Guillermo del Toro, I was equal parts excited and skeptical going into it. Excited because I liked Guillermo del Toro, and I do think, just without seeing a trailer or anything, just hearing the news that Frankenstein is going to be adapted and the director who is going to be directing it is Guillermo del Toro, that is like good news. That sounds like that's a good fit. That's one of the people that I would think of as being, you know, my top choices for who I would want to direct a project like that. And as far as I know, Guillermo del Toro personally has said that he's a big fan of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Which, okay, sure. Did you read it though? So I was hesitantly excited because I do love Frankenstein so much, and it has been, more than most classics, so utterly betrayed by its adaptations to the point where, you know, the constantly memed joke of Frankenstein, it's the doctor, not the monster. Like this laboratory, Zipperneck, Igor situation that just has nothing to do with Mary Shelley. Nothing to do with the book that she wrote. But that is sort of like the popular image and understanding of Frankenstein. I have like Halloween decor and things that have the little like green-faced Zipperneck on it. And I usually refer to it as Frankenstein, even though I obviously know that that's the monster. But I'm not going to be like, oh, I got a mug that has the monster on it. Because people would be like, no, what? Like the Cookie Monster? I'd be like, no, Frankenstein's monster. I'm like, well, why didn't you just say Frankenstein? Because that's the doctor. Again, having a film that is actually going to try to adapt Mary Shelley's story and not the universal monster idea of Frankenstein. Great. Also, very excited for that. Until now, there's the Kenneth Branagh movie, which is like weird and bad for its own reasons, but was trying to do Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. There is like a made-for-TV one that I started watching, and I would like to finish it, but it is very dry. Like, it's just not, this is, again, like, moving from book to screen, you do need to keep in mind that you do need to pace things a little bit differently in a TV show or a film. But it's like a made-for-TV miniseries. I think it's in 3 parts. I've seen clips of, which is what made me want to watch it, because I've seen clips of how the monster is in that, and that's what made me very hopeful for it. Like, it looks pretty good. So I can't really comment on that one, but again, it's not like a big screen, like, you know, situation like we've got now with Guillermo del Toro. So, until now, the best adaptation that existed, as far as I'm concerned, is the filming of the stage version. There's a pro shot of the stage version that has the Sherlocks in it. They actually alternated. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. National Theatre in the UK. There is a play version. I've seen it in like in person with like a different cast at a local theater. Like there is a play version of it. But they taped their production of it. And Benedict Cumberbatch and Johnny Lee Miller alternated playing Victor and the monster. So that's like the play version, just the play itself is a pretty good adaptation of Frankenstein, because it does change things a little bit and condense things a little bit for the stage. And then that production of it with those 2 actors is phenomenal. You can watch it both ways. You can watch it with Benedict as the monster and with Johnny Lee Miller as Victor. And you can also watch it the other way, where Victor is played by Benedict Cumberbatch and Johnny Lee Miller is the monster. If you are not going to watch both, if you're only going to watch one, I prefer Benedict Cumberbatch as Victor and Johnny Lee Miller as the monster, because Johnny Lee Miller is phenomenal in both roles, so either way, he's knocking it out of the park. Benedict Cumberbatch, he's very good as Victor. I don't really think he pulls off the monster that well. So if you're going to watch one, Benedict is Victor, Johnny Lee Miller is the monster. But I digress. Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, when I first saw the trailer for it, I was even more anxious, but still excited and willing to be open to a different vision. What was clear from the trailer was that this was going to be different. There was, from what you see in the trailer, if you've read the book, you immediately know this is going to be different. So I went into it mostly with the mindset of like, well, let's see how, if it's different. No, I know it's going to be different. Let's see how it's different. Let's see if it pulls off its own kind of version of things. If it's got maybe a different type of message it's going for, if it ultimately circles back to the same message but gets there in a different way. Like let's see what this vision is, because it's different. And it was different, but it did the thing that I said earlier in this video that is pretty much the worst possible mistake to make. It's making changes willy-nilly. And I wouldn't say willy-nilly, but because I do think I know the reason for those changes, but they are bad reasons to be making changes. Because at every turn where it's made a change that I think is a very, very bad change, it seems to me that that choice was made expressly for aesthetic reasons. Purely for like vibes and cinematography reasons. And it's choosing that, it's prioritizing that at every turn over story, over theme, over character. So if there's a choice between 2 ways to depict this occurrence, this character, this scene, if there's a way to do it that's grand and beautiful but betrays the story, or there's a way to do it that's subtler and more less visually impressive, but would be truer to the theme and the story, it is choosing the big one, the pretty one, every time. And when it's something like Frankenstein, which has stood the test of time for its themes rather than its spectacle, that is heartbreaking and so hard for me to watch. So when I finished watching Frankenstein, because I saw it in the theater, my plan is to post this video when it's available on Netflix, so you can have judged this for yourself as well. You're not just taking my word for it. I don't want to poison the well before anyone has the chance to see it. I went into the cinema really excited, and when I finished the film, when I was walking out of the cinema, my overall feeling was more positive than it is now. The more I thought about it and the more I tried to explain and articulate what issues I had with it, the more those things bothered me. And to the point where now, I don't even know if I can say I like the film. Anyway, okay, but that's what we're here to talk about. But my point with that is that it is visually stunning. It is spectacular. It's a Guillermo del Toro film. The costumes, the cinematography, the sets, it is a gorgeous film. The sweeping music, the performances, I don't blame any of the actors. The problems that I have with how this story goes are pretty much entirely down to how the characters are written. And so given that they're written this way, the actors are performing it as well as they can. I don't know why you wrote it like this. But so, yeah, it kind of, what I mean to say is that it sweeps you off your feet. That it was so gorgeous and so sort of overwhelming to the senses and so immersive that I sort of feel like I was tricked into liking it. And then the more I had distance from it, the more I could think about what it was that I saw, what story it had told me, now removed from the awe of it, the more I saw the cracks and the more I was upset by it. And then add to that a sort of extra layer of upsettedness where now I'm not just upset at the movie having done those things, I'm upset at it for having tricked me into being okay with those things for a hot second there. Although, if you follow me on Instagram, like an hour after I saw the film, I posted my immediate reaction, and even then, I was like, oh, I wanted to like it more than I did. And now I'm like, did I even like it? Okay, so, yeah, that's preamble. So here I once again am struggling with how to organize this video, but we're just gonna do our best and we're gonna jump around because trying to stay to a strict structure of we're gonna do theme or we're gonna do chronology or we're gonna do characters was not working for me. So right now it seems most logical to me to talk about what is Frankenstein the book about if you have never ever read it, or if you did read it but it was like in high school so you don't really remember, you just sort of like, oh yeah, a guy reanimates dead flesh, the book. You're like, okay, as far as I can tell, that's what happens in Guillermo del Toro's film, so what's the big deal? What's the big difference? So Frankenstein the book. It's not very long. It's actually really short. Like all these editions of it. Like this edition looks longer because it has 2 versions of it in it. This is just Frankenstein with nothing else. It's very short. And it's a pretty simple story. I think I have that in my script somewhere said much more beautifully. But that it's sort of deceptive in its simplicity because the story, the plot, is, again, it's told fairly quickly because there's not a lot of pieces to it, again, in terms of like a huge cast of characters or spanning a huge number of years or being about like multiple generations or having a really intricate, complicated plot where it's like hard to follow and you have to really focus. None of that. Absolutely none of that. Frankenstein is very simple. It's a very straightforward story. That's the most complex thing about it is the sort of nested storytelling that it does. It has multiple sort of narrative devices, sort of framing devices, and the film is sort of slavishly loyal to this, which I think it harms the film, 1, because you don't need it, and 2, because your story really doesn't need it, because the way you change the story, you really don't need this. But Frankenstein the book, it opens with with a character that's almost nothing to do with the events of the story, because he is going to like come upon Victor, and then Victor is going to tell to him what happened to him, and this man is writing letters to his sister about what Victor is telling him, and Victor is telling him about what the monster told him. So we do have like a Russian nesting doll situation of storytelling, but it's not hard to follow that because, you know, man is like, hey, sister, crazy thing happened to me. Met this dude. Let me tell you about it. And then we transition to dude. This is what he told me. And so Victor's now telling you what he told dude. And then at a certain point, Victor's like, and then the monster. This is what he told me. And then we do that. And then we sort of like work our way back out of that. So it's not hard to follow. And again, it is very, very simple. Even though we have multiple layers to get to there, it is about this man called Victor Frankenstein, we learn a little bit about his family life as his childhood, and then we learn about sort of why he would be interested in this kind of work at all. And then he goes to school, and we don't spend a ton of time on like the nitty-gritty on how he's accomplishing this, because that's not the point of the story, but he accomplishes this. He figures out how to animate dead flesh, and then he does it. And then he's like, oh boy, I really did it. Now what? And he doesn't know what to do about it, and is kind of like, and he's sort of like a trust fund kid that has never been challenged, so for the first time in his life there are some consequences to his actions. He's wholly unprepared for this, and he sort of like swoons. He is useless, and the monster disappears, and Frankenstein, Victor, is like, well, out of sight, out of mind, I guess not my problem anymore. But then he is also very paranoid after that. He's like, but it definitely is my problem, and I'm definitely going to see the creature again. And so Victor just continues to not tell anybody that he's done this, to not try to do anything about the fact that he's done this, just tra-la-laing with life until he goes home, and his younger brother has been, spoilers for Frankenstein, by the way, his younger brother, his like baby brother, like little kid brother, has been killed. And a woman who's like close to the family is arrested on suspicion of having killed him. And Victor is like, I know the creature did this. I know the monster did this. But he doesn't do anything about it. He's sure this is true. And then he's like, oh, but the law is so perfect. So obviously that girl didn't do it. So obviously the law will find her innocent, because you can't find someone guilty for a crime they didn't commit. I'm not going to offer any evidence. I'm not going to say anything about it, because people would think I was crazy if I told them that, oh no, like the undead monster I made did this. That'd be like, so he's just like, I'm not going to tell anybody, they wouldn't believe me anyway, but it's fine, because like she's going to be fine, because no one's going to believe she really did it. Only they do believe she did it, and she gets executed. So Victor is pretty broken up about that. He's very emo sad boy about that. Still doesn't tell anyone what he did. Still doesn't warn anybody about what he did, even though he knows that this monster is now out here killing people. Doesn't do anything about it. And then finally the monster confronts him and is like, hey, Victor, remember me? Would you like to know what I've been up to for the last couple of years? Would you? And then we get that part of the story where now the monster is telling us, like, here's what happened to me in the interim. You made me. Here's where I've been since then, since this moment, or up to this moment. And this is when we learn, so how the monster, like, figured out life. Like, he didn't know what he was, didn't know where he was. He stumbles around pretty blindly. He's hideous to look at, so he's not getting a great reception from anyone he encounters. Doesn't really know how to take care of himself, but Victor did make him really strong and big and healthy, so he's not really in any danger in that sense. He's just in danger of, like, people freaking out over how he looks. And he finds his way to a farmhouse where he's in hiding, but he can, like, hang out on the property and he can watch the family. And he does little odd jobs for them, which they notice, but they're like, oh, that's weird, but I guess that's kind of cool. And then there's a plot convenience, which most adaptations cut or make it a little kid instead, because it's a little bit, well, it's not really necessary. The reason for this inclusion is to give the excuse for why he would be able to learn how to read. There is a character that comes into it who has, like, a romantic attachment to, like, to the son who lives there. And the backstory of that, again, it's not necessary, and it's a little, for our modern standards, I have no issue with people cutting it. It's only there because she doesn't speak English, and so then they have to teach her English, and so then the monster can watch them teaching her English and can also learn how to read and write. And that's why it's there. So, like, the stage version does this, and the movie does this. Most versions do this. They just make it a little kid. A kid is being taught to read and write, which, like, that takes care of that. We don't need the rest. But he, like, watches the family, and he really, like, kind of comes to love them, even though he can't interact with them. They've never spoken to him. He's just sort of he's just watching them, and again, learning how to read and write. And then because he's learning how to read and write, then this is how he also learns. We hear about the books that he's read. He learns about history. He learns, I guess this is why it can't be a kid in the book, because if it's a little kid that's just learning how to read and write, but his education and this person's education who he's sort of piggybacking on isn't just learning to read and write, but they're learning about history and economics and philosophy. So he's picking that up too. And a big part of it is that he's reading Paradise Lost. And he uses that to contextualize his place in the world. Like what he is, what Victor is to him, the plot convenience of the coat he's wearing that he grabbed when he left, it still has Victor's journal in it, and he now can read and write. So at first he was just like, I don't know what this is, whatever. Now he can read and write. Now he looks at it again and he's like, oh, this is a journal explaining what Victor was doing, like why he was doing this, like what the process was for putting me together. And also has Victor's name. So now he has like a clue to go off of, like what he is, where he is, and how to find Victor. Anyway, things don't go great with the family when they do actually see him, and so he's really upset about that. How could they be so cruel to him when he's done nothing wrong? He comes upon a girl who's like, I think she's drowning or was attacked or something, but regardless, he saves her. But as soon as her father, her uncle, or whoever it is, sees the monster, he attacks the monster because he's afraid of him, even though he has just saved the girl. So once again, the monster is like, what the heck? Like, I am putting out love, and I'm getting in return cruelty and hatred. But he's got Victor's name, and he's like, I'm gonna go find Victor and have a word about this whole situation. And on his way to find Victor, he like comes upon a kid, and the kid is freaking out and screaming, and he's like, no, 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 like, you know, calm down, I'm not gonna hurt you. And the kid is like, I'm gonna go tell my dad, you know, something, something Frankenstein. And he's like, oh, you are related to Victor? And that, like, he gets angry about it and kills the kid. And that's how the kid ends up dead. Justine gets arrested and executed for this crime. And now here we are. Victor is telling, the monster is telling Victor, that's where I've been so far, and this is all your fault because you just left me. You're my maker. How could you do this? Like, this is so effed up. And because he's read Paradise Lost, and he's like, I am your Adam, basically, except that God was a lot nicer to Adam, and is like, and you know what else God did? God gave Adam Eve. So that's the very least you can do, is give me an Eve, because like Adam, I am all alone because humanity wants nothing to do with me. So make me an Eve, and I'll leave you alone. I won't be killing people anymore. Just give me somebody that can be my friend, can be my companion, and then that's it. We'll call it even. Victor is not cool with any of this. Is like, you are just the worst, and I don't want to help you. He has no pity for him. But he's finally like, okay, but if it'll get him to stop killing people, I don't really want to do this, but I guess that's the best solution here, because I don't really know what else to do, because he's clearly like really strong and powerful, so I guess I'll do it. Still hasn't told his family, still hasn't told anybody that he has done this, and that he's about to do it again, and the danger that they may or may not be in. But anyway, he goes off, starts making another one for the monster, and then partway through the process is like, you know what, just kidding, I'm not doing this. You can't make me. This is wrong. I don't want to do this. You don't deserve a companion. What if you have children that are like this? Ugh. No. Destroys it. And the monster is like, oh, it's like that? Great. Well, I am your enemy now. And I will be with you on your wedding day. And Victor's like, he's gonna kill me on my wedding day. There is literally no other possible interpretation of that threat. Why he's not killing me right this second, and why he's gonna kill me on my wedding day instead, who knows, but that's what he must mean. So I'm just gonna I'm gonna proceed with plans to get married to Elizabeth, who isn't really much of a character in the book. She's there to sort of like be that damsel. She grew up with Victor. In the original, she's his cousin. In the later versions, she's like a ward of the family that she still grows up with Victor. So it's kind of always been like, well, they're probably going to get together. Like, the parents kind of want it. They've all kind of understood that's the case. When he's been all moody and emo boy, she's like, is it because you don't want to marry me? He's like, no, for sure, I want to marry you. It's something else. And she's like, oh, okay, cool. So they get married, or they still plan to get married. And on the wedding night, Victor's like, it's finally occurred to me that it might be kind of traumatizing for Elizabeth to watch the monster kill me. So let me do her a solid and like go step away. Let me be in a different room when the monster comes to find me. So of course he's not in the room with Elizabeth when the monster shows up to do what the monster fully intended to do the entire time, and that is kill Elizabeth. Because of course that's what he wanted to do. Like, oh, come on, Victor. So anyway, he kills Elizabeth, and Victor is like, oh, it never occurred to me. How could I have been so stupid? This is terrible. My whole life now is basically now I have to destroy this creature. Like, I made him, I need to destroy him. This needs to end. And so now they're sort of like locked in a battle of wills. The monster is obviously more powerful and more strong. And Victor has chased the monster all the way to the Arctic, which is where our original framing device for this story came upon Victor, because Victor has been sort of hunting down the monster ever since, and he's sort of at the end of his ability to do that, and has now told his story to this guy. He's like, this is why, you know, I hate to put this on you, but like, I clearly can't finish this because I'm gonna die, but then someone's got to finish this. Like, so FYI, there's this horrible monster out there. I'm not going to tell you how I did it, how I animated dead flesh, because no one should ever do it. It's a bad idea. And then the monster does show up and is like lamenting Victor's death. And when the Arctic like boat captain sort of chews out the monster, which is pretty bold of him, I'm not going to lie. The monster expresses hatred for Victor, but even greater hatred for himself. He's really remorseful about what it is that he became. And he does partly blame Victor for this, or asks the reader / his audience at the time, the guy in the Arctic, like, is it just my fault? You know, isn't it also a bit Victor's fault that this happened? Isn't it a little bit humanity's fault that this happened? Are they not at least partly to blame? Because he hates himself for what he's done. He's like, I wanted to love, I wanted to be kind, I wanted to like give to the world my love and receive it in kind. And at every turn I was shut down, even by my maker, Victor. So he's like, look, I hate that I ended up killing and destroying beauty and innocence, but isn't it a little bit also y'all's fault? A little bit. He hates himself for this, which is what makes him a tragic figure, and also the fact that he's not trying to say, well, it's not my fault. Well, it's actually literally all of your fault, and I'm totally in the right. He doesn't say any of that. The monster is very like, I am wretched because I am alone. I am wretched because I am filled with remorse and guilt over what I have done, and over now my ability to understand what I've done because I can read and write and philosophize. But is this wretchedness not a little bit your fault? I hate what I've done, and I hate you for making me do it, but you did kind of make me do it. So it leaves off with this, with the monster having the last word. Most of the story has been told to you by Victor, but the monster gets the last word. And the monster's not telling you that he's actually the hero of the story, but he is saying, come on. It's at least an equal share of guilt to go around here. So anyway, Frankenstein is amazing. Frankenstein is about your purpose and place in the world. It's about your duty to humanity, duty to your fellow man. Those are different to me in the sense of like your duty to just mankind writ large versus your duty to like people around you. So Victor's duty to mankind, i.e., science and scientific discovery, versus his duty to his fellow man, i.e. to his family, to Elizabeth, to the monster, people he's directly interacting with, and then the monsters as well. His duty to mankind versus his duty to the people he's interacting with. Nature and like the needs of at least our species, what like humans need in order to feel whole, in order to feel like they are alive, and what they need from other humans. And perhaps more than anything, it's about hubris. And so, are these themes present in Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein? Not really. Not really. Maybe hubris? A bit? So, what I kind of jumped over in my like brief Cliff Notes version of Frankenstein is Victor's childhood, which again, the book doesn't spend a lot of time on any of this. It's a short book. But Victor grows up in a very loving family. He has multiple siblings, he has loving parents, and his mother's death is like a formative experience for him. It gets his wheels turning about the whole mortality question. And is there a way that he could solve that? Could he cheat death? Could he beat death? Could he reanimate flesh that is already dead? That's like what gets that tick tick-tocking in his mind. And then he's got more of a philosophical classical education, not a scientific one, at home. So his ideas, to begin with, are sort of more kind of zany alchemy, philosophy, this kind of thing. And it's only later when he's starting to get a scientific education, they're like, what? Like, those aren't like real things. Like those, because he's sort of thinking of these things as what is possible. And they're like, no, alchemy is like not a thing. You should read some actual science books. And he's like very annoyed at how narrow-minded they are. And so he finds like a professor when he goes to school that's more like, hey, no, it's actually like, you shouldn't be so, we shouldn't think so narrowly. They shouldn't make fun of you for having read those things. It's good to have both, to read really practical science like that we've discovered, and also to sort of expand the mind and think about what else might be possible, to stretch the limits of what's possible. So we don't go again into like huge depth into like what he's learning or into like anatomy or any of that. It's more like he came from ideas that are more philosophical and more magical thinking. Then he gets a scientific education and he sort of marries the two. And then that's how we arrive at being able to animate dead flesh. So you had to be a person that thought that this could be possible and then receive the education to make it possible, is sort of what the marrying of those two mindsets. And his family's very supportive of his education. They're very supportive of him. They're just a very loving, supportive family. And so when he goes off to school and he does this, and then he's like, oh, whoopsie, I actually did it though. Doesn't know what to do about it, and then is like, well, buries his head in the sand. He doesn't like abuse the creature. He doesn't hurt the creature, unless you want to categorize abandonment as hurt, which you absolutely should. But he's not violent towards him. He's not cruel. He's just absent. He just does nothing with the creature. And goes back to his family, and his family's all like, oh, you seem so like off. You seem so sad. And he's like, yes, but whatever, I'll get over it. And they're like, we're so worried about you. And you're like, do you still want to marry Elizabeth? And like, maybe you should have a holiday, where you've got us so stressed, we all love you so much. He doesn't, again, tell them anything about what he's done. Doesn't clue them in to either like the incredible discovery that it is and also to the incredible danger that they might be in. Not a word. And so then when the creature comes to him and is like, I am so alone, you abandoned me, and then every person that I've encountered has been horrified by me. This kind of loneliness is not like, I can't live like this. Victor has never experienced that. Never once in his life has he experienced that. At every turn, he's had people in his corner, has people supporting him. He literally cannot comprehend what the monster is on about, like what the pain of that kind of loneliness would be. He has no referent for it, and he has no empathy in order to try to imagine what that would be like. All he knows is like this monster's evil and gross, and we should kill him. So, in Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, Victor grows up in a household that is very abusive and austere. His father's played by Charles Dance, and he's like a very abusive father, and he's a doctor, which he is not. In the book, I think he's a judge. I think Victor's father is a judge, or something like that. In any event, not a doctor. Victor Frankenstein's father is a doctor in Guillermo del Toro's version, and is forcing on him a scientific like doctor education, because he's got to follow in his father's footsteps. And his mother then dies in childbirth, giving birth to a younger brother. So then the family is just dad and the two brothers, and then dad dies too, so then it's just Victor and this younger brother. But he's not like a little kid. He's he's quite a bit younger than Victor, but like they're both adults for the rest of the story. So then Victor is off getting his education and being a man of science, and unlike our trust fund spoiled brat in the book, this Victor is out here challenging the ideas of science in a very public and brash way. And he came from an abusive household. He has not had like this loving kind of family behind him as a kid, and he certainly doesn't have one now. It's just his brother. He does have a good relationship with his brother, but he's sort of this like lone man who's like out here challenging authority, challenging ideas of science, making public demonstrations. And very early in the film, which is part of a scene that's in the trailer, he is actually showing off to people that he has partly already succeeded in animating dead flesh. He's doing it to show off, but also to make a point that like they want to shut down what he's working on. But he's actually like, he's not a crank, he's not a loony, he's actually onto something here. But of course they still try to shut it down, and so then he needs a lot of funding in order to like continue this work, which again, not really a thing in the book. In the book, Victor is doing this by himself, and he personally by himself in secret is like gathering dead body parts and sewing them together and making the creature in his, you know, loner little basement there. Like he's just doing it himself. In the film, he gets a huge amount of money. He gets a huge financial sponsorship from Elizabeth's father. So in this version, Elizabeth is not a ward or a cousin that Victor grew up with. He actually meets her father first. Her father is like, hey, you don't know me, but I kind of know you because my daughter is going to be marrying your brother. I'm the future father-in-law of your brother. And he is like, so, and I'm super interested in your research. I think it's actually super awesome. And I would like to give you all of my money so that you can continue working on this. And Victor's like, I don't know about that. And he's like, come on, I'm giving you unlimited money. You are saying yes to that. And he's like, yeah, you're right. I'm saying yes to that. Then he meets Elizabeth, and Elizabeth is perhaps the greatest crime of this film. And this film commits a lot of crimes. So Elizabeth is very in his face, but in a quiet, delicate way. Because Guillermo del Toro comes from the Tim Burton school of feminine beauty, which means you have to look like a consumptive doll. So Elizabeth is frail and China doll-like in her aesthetic, but she's a strong female character who challenges Victor, and he finds that so enticing, and she reminds him of his mother, and he's obsessed, you know, obviously still with the death of his mother, and that's, in theory, what set him on this path, just like in the book. And so everyone knows that Elizabeth's father is going to be giving Victor a bunch of money to continue this research. Elizabeth and Victor's brother are kind of part of the planning. They identify a good location where they can set up what they need to set up. They hire a huge team in order to be sourcing bodies. You know, there's a war on, so they're like, there's lots and lots of, you know, carcasses that we can pull from. So they gather all the parts, and Victor's giving all the like project management direction about how these are the size he needs and the dimensions he needs, and he's like checking out what they're bringing, and he's like, no, not this one. This one is better. He's building this gigantic laboratory, which visually is stunning. It is spectacular, the facility that they build for Victor to be doing the science. Which, back to what I said originally, this movie chooses every time spectacle and cinematography over story. The fact that Victor in the book is a loner dweeb who's doing this himself, by himself, without any thought to the consequences of what he's doing, and then succeeds by himself and is like, oh shit, is pretty integral to the themes of the story as well as how the story unfolds thereafter. But anyway, back to the film. He is this huge laboratory. It is spectacular. And when, you know, we get to the point where he's actually, you know, lightning is striking and we're actually animating dead flesh, I mean, it's spectacular. But here, again, everyone is aware that he's doing this. We're going to say everyone, a large amount of people are aware that he's doing this. And when he succeeds, Elizabeth and his brother show up. And at first he kind of tries to hide it from them, but obviously like they know that he's working on this, so what they aren't yet aware of is that he's succeeded, but they know he's working on it, and are checking in on if he's succeeded or if he's close. But the creature, who he has chained up in the basement, and he's been trying to teach him, he hasn't abandoned him, he hasn't immediately been like, oh shit, what have I done? He has a line like that at one point where he kind of pays lip service to that, where he's like, oh, I kind of hadn't thought about it, like, the moment after I succeed, like, what that was going to be like. Oh, wow. So he kind of has, like, a second to be like, oh my gosh, like, it's too real for me. But then he, like, immediately launches into, okay, let's teach this monster how to talk and how to function, and let's test its abilities. Like, we're continuing the scientific method. Okay, we did it. We made it possible. Now, okay, next step is, did I succeed in making an intelligent being? So, like, let's teach it, let's see what its limitations are. And he was schooled in the film by an abusive father. So, in theory, that's what we're seeing here. Like, we can interpret Victor's attitude towards the monster as being not dissimilar from how his father treated him. And, again, this is not a thing that's in the book. One, because Victor was not abused as a kid, so there would not be that theme at all. And then two, Victor doesn't do anything with the monster. He doesn't coddle it or abuse it. He just completely abandons and neglects it. So in this one, Victor was abused and now is abusing the creature. So now this is a story potentially about cycles of violence, about the abused becoming the abuser. And when I was first watching the film, I was like, okay, again, that's not what the book is about at all. But that doesn't mean the film can't be about that. So let's see how it further develops that theme. It doesn't really, but anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So Victor has been quite cruel to the monster, but not... It's a callous and cold kind of cruelty, not really like a sadistic kind of cruelty. Like it borders on that, I suppose, when the degree to which he's neglectful. But he's treating the monster like a lab rat, which I don't think we should treat lab rats like that either. But I'm a vegan, so anyway, he's like chained up in the basement, and Victor like brings him out, still chained, but you know, to like try to like show him things, try to get him to identify things, kind of like a preschooler where you're like, you know, say this color, say this letter, say this word, you know, do what I say, learn, show me you're learning. And he's doing it quite aggressively and cruelly, and he'll hit him if he's getting it wrong. So he's being mean. He's being a big meanie. And the monster is not responding to this. So again, this is not present in the book because this does not happen. But this is now a story about how, you know, kids don't respond to cruelty. How you get more flies with honey. How you should gentle parent or whatever. So anyway, this is the situation. And Victor's like low-key started to kind of give up on the monster. He's like, I may have like animated you and your flesh and made you alive and you're like big and giant and strong and whatever. So like I did that, but there's nothing upstairs. So we need to scrap this and start over. But Brother and Elizabeth show up. And they do, I think it's Elizabeth that first discovers him. She like wanders over. I think she hears a noise. I don't remember. Kind of unimportant. The point is she wanders and finds the monster in the basement. And then they go find her. And she's like, oh my gosh, you did it. Like, you did it. He's amazing. He's so amazing. And Victor's like, yeah, I did it. I don't know if he's amazing. He's like, he's pretty dumb. So they're like talking to him about like his success and... which is again, it's just so bizarre if you're familiar with the book, because such a huge part of it is such a huge part of the plot hinges on nobody knowing that this is going on or that this is a possibility, this is an option. Only Victor knows about it. He's doing nothing about it. So here, everyone knows about it, and Victor's very much not abandoned this. Like he's definitely in a dark way taking responsibility for what he's done. So yeah, so Elizabeth finds him and is kind. She's sweet, she thinks he's so amazing, and instead of abusing him, she's patient. It's very, you know, Beauty and the Beast, it's very the Black Widow with the Hulk, you know, the sun's getting real low. And this whole time, the only thing that Victor has succeeded in getting the monster to say is Victor. He's learned his name, and that's the only thing he vocalizes. Anytime anything comes up where he has to say anything, he just says Victor. Sometimes on purpose to get his attention, and sometimes just like that's the only thing he knows how to say. And Victor finds that really irritating. So Elizabeth's kind to him, and now he learns a second word, Elizabeth. And Victor has already been a little bit kind of jealous that she's with his brother, because he's clearly interested in her. But now she's interested in the monster. And here we come to the crime of Elizabeth in this film. I just scroll to my page on Elizabeth to make sure I don't miss anything. Okay, Elizabeth. When I saw this scene, when I was first watching this movie, where she's being kind to the monster, she's patiently showing him things, she's not hitting him when he gets it wrong, she's being really encouraging and kind and sweet and beautiful, and the monster's like, wow, you're so nice. I thought, which would be, again, very different in the book, but an interesting and okay way to go with this, is that instead of the rejection of strangers being the thing that puts the monster over the edge, that he's going to form an attachment to Elizabeth, and she's just being kind. She thinks he's magnificent as, you know, an amazing thing to have achieved, and she sees him as a human person, and so she's empathetic and good and angelic and everything, but it's a purely platonic kind of kindness. But he's going to feel romantically about her, and she's going to feel horrified by that, and that rejection is going to be the thing that, for lack of a better word, radicalizes him, the thing that makes him that rejection, the pain of that is gonna, you know, set him over the edge. That is not what the movie does. Here, it's not really cinema. Well, maybe it's cinema. Here, it's not so much that, like, the cinematography is what Guillermo del Toro is prioritizing. He's prioritizing fan fiction and wish fulfillment. Because when Victor realizes that Elizabeth was talking to the monster, and she's like, he's so amazing, he's like, wow, I am feeling low-key jealous. I was like, is that where we're going with this? And that is absolutely where we're going with this. Elizabeth has the hots for the monster. And first of all, kind of ridiculous. Second of all, even worse, because the interaction that I just described, that is basically the only interaction that Elizabeth and the monster have. Period. This is the foundation of their great love. Because after this, Victor decides to destroy the laboratory and to kill the monster. And he, at the moment when he is basically already almost done this, he is yelling at the creature to convince him not to. He's saying, say something that's not my name. Say something else. Say one other thing. Convince me not to kill you, not to give up. And of course, the only thing the monster knows how to say besides Victor is Elizabeth. And this pisses off Victor, so he's like, oh, for sure, you about to die. So he sets fire to the whole thing, destroys the laboratory, and leaves the monster chained up in the basement to die in a fiery inferno. Which is really messed up, for sure. It is also not what Frankenstein is about. In Frankenstein, the book, if the villain is Victor, which we mostly think it is, he's the villain through his apathy, through his inaction, through his sociopathic inability to, like, sympathize with anybody but him, outside of himself. When he creates the creature, he's just like, oops, what do I do? And it becomes his problem when the monster is killing his personal loved ones, and he's like, oh, I should do something about this. As long as there's no, like, personal risk to me. When the monster is begging for sympathy, for empathy, Victor is incapable of giving that to him. When he's asking for a companion, Victor's like, nope. When the monster's like, I'm going to be with you on your wedding day, Victor's like, he's going to kill me. What else could he possibly mean? But I'm definitely still going to marry the girl, even though at the last minute he does realize, even if Victor was right, that it would be him, the Victor's the one that's going to get killed, that it would be traumatizing for her to lose her new husband on their wedding night, and to witness it. But even then, he's like, well, whatever. Like, I'm the one that's the victim here. It's like, I'll marry her and have this, like, one happy moment before I die. And that'll be the end of it. I accept my fate. Which is, it's like a messed up thing to do to Elizabeth, even if you don't think she's gonna die. Even though you definitely should have predicted that she was gonna die. So your inability to think about either of those scenarios, again, Victor is a sociopath. That's his crime. His crime is hubris. He's like, I'm gonna do this science. I'm not gonna think about the consequences, and then when I see the consequences, I'm not gonna do anything about those consequences. And oh, woe is me, no one has suffered as greatly as me. At the end of the book, when he's telling his story to this man in the Arctic, he's like, literally no one has ever suffered as much as me. I am the most wretched of humans. And then in comes the monster and is like, hold my beer. What? And I feel like you as the reader are meant to also go like, oh, please, Victor. Like, I definitely roll my eyes every time when I read Victor being like, no one has ever been as wretched as me. I'm like, really? No one? I can think of one person. It's Loki, your fault. Like, he has been loved. He has been respected. At this final moment, this man in the Arctic is like, Victor, you're so cool and amazing. I want to hear your story. You're like the most magnificent man. It's like, and Victor's like, no, I must die because I've done a terrible thing. It is my fate. It's my burden. It's like, oh, fuck off. I wonder what inspired Mary Shelley to write a character like that. Anyway, yeah. Victor destroys the laboratory, destroys the monster. So, thereafter, Victor and Elizabeth and Victor's brother are all laboring under the assumption that the monster is dead. So, in that sense, I suppose we've kind of come back to something akin to the original story, because in the original, the family just doesn't know about the monster at all. Whereas here, they know about it, but like as far as they know, that's over and done with. So they wouldn't imagine that the monster is anymore a factor in their lives. In this version, because they know that he existed and now no longer does, versus not even knowing that's a thing that ever happened. But so now we go back and we do the same thing that the book does. The monster, he escapes the fiery inferno because he's super strong, super big, super tall. He's Jacob Elordi. So I mean, of course, Elizabeth, as soon as she saw naked Jacob Elordi, she was like, oh, be still my heart. You don't have to speak. You said my name, I'm sold. Anyway, we do the monster's tale, and the book, the film frames it in the same way. We do the Arctic, then we do Victor telling his tale, and now the chapter title card tells us we're doing the monster's tale, the creature's tale. And once more, the creature is like discovering the world and is like, wow, sunlight, berries, fire is hot, whatever. Comes upon a family where he observes the family. Again, like I said, we do a child that's learning how to read, so he learns how to read. We do Paradise Lost is on screen and he's told to read it. And at one point, I think he does reference it like for a single line, but it's not informing the story. It's not informing how the monster is really understanding himself, or how the sort of comparison that we, the reader, would need to be making. It's literally there. Even when I first saw the film and I was thinking a little more kindly towards it, or was a little more hopeful, it literally was like, see guys, here's that scene. See, Paradise Lost, just like the book. See, he's reading it. Nailed it. Did it. I was like, yeah, okay, but it's not just the fact that he reads Paradise Lost. Like, it's supposed to be really important and significant to his contextualizing of himself and his place in the world. You can't just be like, see, he read it. He did it. He did the thing. But okay. Anyway, so yeah, it doesn't go great with the family. Violence ensues. He is rejected, and he has now decided to go find Victor. The downside to not following a script is that you forget stuff. So I did also mean to say that the part where the monster goes off to see the family in the farm and likes them, like falls in love with them platonically, learns to love them, learns to read, etc., and then is rejected by them. This part of the story teaches the monster is the learning opportunity for two things for the monster. One, the actual learning of learns to read, learns to write, reads Paradise Lost, blah blah blah. So that's the part of it that is still necessary for why that's still here in the film. But in the book, this is also the monster's first experience of being of loving and being rejected, of loving and then being met with violence. And the monster has already learned this lesson in the film from Victor. It's necessary in the book because the monster doesn't know Victor. He's just exists and has no context, no nothing. And he, oh my god, why does it look like this? he needs to, this is that radicalizing moment for him, I suppose. The giving love and being rejected. So he already learned that from Victor in the film. So this is not necessary, or it's not serving the same purpose. So when we get to this in the movie, it's here because this is what happens in the book, not because it's thematically necessary for the growth of the character of the monster. Does that make sense? Which is why, again, you can't change things in a vacuum. You have to think about all the changes you make holistically. You can change things. You can change when and why and where somebody does something, but that has a ripple effect. And if you make changes to Victor, to the monster, to Elizabeth, whatever, it doesn't only affect the scene you changed. It affects every other scene that may or may not have been influenced by the thing that previously was different, or that was colored by it, or was the context of that changes how you interpret what comes later. Anyway, yeah. And he finds the destroyed laboratory, and I think, instead of finding a journal in his pocket, he makes his way to the laboratory, finds it, and he's like, I remember. And I think when he's there, even though it exploded, there's somehow fragments of paper left. So he finds, I forget what he finds, but he finds something, a piece of paper or a letter or something like that like tells him who Victor is and where to find him. I want to say it's like an invitation to something that's addressed to Victor that his brother had brought to him or something like that. But anyway, this is the bit of paper, the plot convenience paper that tells him where to find Victor. So in this version, the monster, I can't believe I'm going to say this, is too sympathetic. Like, yeah, okay, people who only know the Universal Monster are like, what do you mean, like, Victor's the villain and the monster is the hero? And everyone who's read the book is like, obviously Victor's the villain, the monster is the hero, if there is a hero, but neither is a hero. It's complicated, it's great. Here, again, Guillermo del Toro, I believe that he read Frankenstein, and I believe that he felt really bad for the monster, as you are meant to. You are meant to feel all of the empathy and all of the sympathy that Victor is incapable of. You are meant to watch this wretched creature, and your heart is meant to break for him. And also break for the monster that he becomes. Like, he's treated monstrously and he becomes a monster, and that's a tragedy. But because you feel that empathy, that doesn't mean that you should now, like, the kindness that you wish to show this character when you read this shouldn't now turn into kindness that you show him in your adaptation. Like, altering the story to be kinder to him as, like, an act of kindness to this creature that you felt bad for. Does that make sense? Like in real life, if you saw someone suffering and you're like, I'm going to be kind to them, like, you're actively participating in their life and in their story. But if it's a fictional character and you're like, the way I'm going to be kind to this fictional character is by changing their story and being nicer to them, now you've changed the story and the point of the story and the thing that made that character leave such an impression on you. So that's a bad idea. So in this version, Victor doesn't have a little kid brother for the monster to kill. So that's just, it's like there's not an option to do that, but there isn't like a different kid that he kills. There's no innocent young woman that is then executed for said murder. Like, none of that happens. Instead, on Elizabeth's wedding day, this is not to Victor. She's marrying his brother. The monster shows up and has a confrontation with Victor. I only saw the movie once because it was only in theaters for a week. So bear with me. Normally I would like to like watch something again and be able to like take more notes. But anyway, I think we do a confrontation outside in nature, which is how it happens in the book, where like he's outside and Victor confronts, or the monster confronts Victor. And this is where the monster is like, hey, you owe me an Eve. And in the book, Victor goes off and starts to do this and then is like, just kidding. Here we cut right to the chase. And again, if memory serves, Oscar Isaac. Victor, I should have just called him Oscar Isaac because he's not Victor Frankenstein. Victor is like, no, absolutely not. Like, I make you, you're saying I give you a companion and off you go to live in peace? No, you're gonna make children. You're gonna make a whole species of horrible monsters and I cannot be having that, so no. So again, the monster now is gonna be showing up at the wedding day. Again, it's not Victor's wedding day, it's Elizabeth's wedding day to Victor's brother. And the monster shows up and is confronting, maybe this is where the confrontation happens, where he asks for Eve, like at the wedding day? It might be that. Regardless, he does ask for this, and at some point, and Victor does, like, shut that down. So anyway, he's shown up, and Victor immediately tries to kill him, and Elizabeth, like, her spidey senses are tingling and realizes the monster is there, and she runs into the room and is like, it's you, and she's, like, in her beautiful wedding dress. Like, again, aesthetically, like, no notes, 10 out of 10. It's just, the story is, it's not great. Elizabeth runs into his arms, and Victor accidentally shoots her instead of the monster. So then she dies in the monster's arms, not before saying, take me away. So then he scoops her up and carries her off to some cave where she bleeds out and is like, at least, you know, I get to die with you or in your arms or with you looking at me or some such thing, and you know, the monster's like, no! And Victor's brother also dies during the wedding. I forget exactly how this happens, but it's like in the tumult that ensues, because after Victor has shot Elizabeth and she's like in the creature's arms, you know, bleeding out, then of course Victor's like, he killed her, get him, and everyone's like, there's like a kerfuffle, and I don't think Victor kills his brother, but the brother does, like, I think he gets his head slammed. Like, I think he might go towards them and the monster throws him off. But he does, like, he gets, like, hurt and Victor's like, oh, no, no, no. And then the last words from the brother are something about how Victor's the real monster, that he's always been afraid of Victor, and then he dies, which is so not set up. Throughout this whole movie, yeah, Victor's the brash one, the aggressive one, the one with the big ambitions, the big dreams, the crazy scientist man. But the brother's been, like, kind and supportive, and he, like, helped him with the laboratory, and he's, like, been in his corner, and they're like, you're my brother, and, like, it's been, you know, he's, like, the milder, younger, lesser brother, but they're, like, still brothers, and it's been fine. And now, and he's, like, he shows, like, a little bit of kind of, like, concern and confusion over the laboratory and the explosion and everything, but he's been pretty much just kind of on board for this. And to have his dying words be like, it's you, you're the monster. It's like, again, like, I know you read Frankenstein, and you wanted us to be like, ah, yeah, Victor's the monster. So we just gave that line to his brother, so that at some point in the movie, we'd have somebody actually verbally stating that Victor is the real monster. Like, one, did we need that? The book never does that. Two, it's not set up. We could have, I guess, done that, but that's not set up. Like, if Elizabeth had said that, it might make more sense, because she does say things throughout the movie where she's like, you know, you may be brilliant, but, like, you're cruel, and, like, you're, like, she challenges him all the time and criticizes him all the time, and is like, I can't believe that you would do this, or, like, that's wrong, or whatever. And she's, like, clearly, like, not happy about the monster being chained up. Like, if she was like, you're the monster, that would fit, but she's too busy dying in the monster's arms in a cave. True love. Which, again, may I remind you, the only interaction that she's had with the monster was him chained up in a basement, unable to speak, where she was nice to him and taught him her name, and he managed to say it. And then she thought he was dead. And now she's dying. And now he's, like, super articulate. He's, like, able to talk. And she doesn't really question that. She's just like, it's you. I love you. And I'm not joking. In the cinema where I was, people laughed. People were laughing at Elizabeth being like, in love with the monster. And yeah, like, I would have laughed too if I wasn't too busy trying not to cry. And not at the sadness of this tragic love story, no. At what you have done to this amazing story. Why would you do this? Like, my version that I thought was going to be the version, which is that he wants her and she rejects him and he lashes out and kills her, maybe? That would be, again, different from the book, but still, like, doing something interesting thematically, and also still doing the theme of the book, which is that he's been rejected by every single person in the world, including his maker. I realized while I was editing that I didn't actually talk about The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, even though I kept teasing that I would. I don't actually have, like, that much to say about it. I really was just going to bring it up as, like, a counterpoint to how Elizabeth is handled in the movie, by which to say I don't object to changing the story. It's, like, once again a different version of the original point of, like, you can change it. Go ahead and change it if you have, like, a good idea. If you have an interesting way to recontextualize this, to tell a different story that's maybe a different theme, but, like, an equally... Oh yeah, there's another edition of Frankenstein right there. That's not the one I was looking for. There's another one. So there's this one plus one more. Anyway, yeah. So I was just going to bring up, if you haven't read it, I highly recommend The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, because that actually does really... Oh yeah, I was going to show this too. I have a Victor Frankenstein candle. I like Frankenstein a lot. That... It's fine to change Elizabeth's character, and it's really, I'm absolutely fine with the idea of, like, giving her more agency, because she absolutely is a nothing of a character in the original story. So telling the story from Elizabeth Lebenz's perspective, which is what The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein does, it does give that character a lot of agency, and it does reframe the events of Frankenstein, because in the original we have only Victor's word for it, that this is how things went down. So in that book, it's because there's wiggle room there. It takes the opportunity to be like, well, what if Victor was lying? What if Victor is an unreliable narrator? Elizabeth was around. What does she have to say about it? So I think it's actually so good and so interesting. And it's a different story. The takeaways from it are different from the original, but it's still very, very interesting and clearly very wanting to have a conversation with the original. It's not disrespecting the original. It's not shitting on the original. It's taking an opportunity that's presented by the way that the original is structured and saying, there's opportunity here to tell an interesting story that is different. Let's see what we can do. So again, if Guillermo del Toro's film had done that, had changed the story, but in a way that was also very interesting, that had something to say that was different, but equally interesting, equally thought-provoking, I would absolutely be fine with it. Because like I said, I love The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein. But alas, that was not the case. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say about that one. Recommend it. Go read it. In this, he's been rejected a lot. His maker tried to kill him after teaching him, so he didn't like abandon him. He very actively tried to kill him, which is not, I'm not saying that's better, but it is very, very different. It is a very, very different kind of relationship that they have. And then Elizabeth is kind to him. And Victor, in his own way, like, was showing him attention. Like, he wasn't, you know, he was devoting a lot of attention to him. It was just very frustrated and abusive, which is how Victor grew up, which, again, we can make that parallel. Abused becomes the abuser. But we don't really explore that. So anyway, Elizabeth dies, and then, you know, now we're doing the end of the book, where now they're locked in this struggle, where Victor has got to kill him for once and for all, and we're in the Arctic, and we've gotten to this point. And now we have this moment where, instead of Victor already being dead, and the monster coming in and talking to the man in the Arctic and being like, is it not Loki also his fault that I am this wretched, horrible monster? Is it not also, like, humanity's fault? He's been telling his own story instead of Victor telling the story that he told. So he shows up and he's like, my turn, I'm gonna tell my story. So he's been telling us this part, this catch-up session. And now he's talking to Victor, and they have this, like, understanding that they reach. And we end on this sort of, like, bittersweet note of kind of forgiveness / understanding. Which we do not even get that kind of catharsis with the original. And in the original, there's much more of a believable opportunity for that. Because Victor, again, his big crime was that he abandoned him, not that he actively tried to murder him. I mean, he's now trying to murder him, but that's, like, after the monster has already done some murdering. He doesn't, like, try to murder him as in, like, an innocent baby, which is basically, like, what he is at that point in the story in Guillermo del Toro. Or he's just this innocent who's chained up in the basement, and he's now gonna kill him. For the monster in this version to be like, we finally, like, understand each other, and we're, like, bound by being creator and created, thing. Like, like, what? He tried to kill you, and he killed Elizabeth, the one person that showed you kindness, which, again, is someone did show you kindness, and you weren't out here murdering people. So in this one, the monster really is just kind of an innocent victim. He's not out here being, like, remorseful because he became a monster that he himself despises. That's not what happened. It's not about that. It's about this evil, horrible, cartoonishly evil, horrible Victor, and then the sweet, innocent baby monster who could have had love, but then Victor killed her. And now the only thing worse than Elizabeth in this movie is that the movie ends on a Lord Byron quote. Like, again, Guillermo del Toro says that he's a fan of this book and of Mary Shelley, but I can't really imagine a bigger fuck you to Mary Shelley than ending this movie on a Lord Byron quote. What? So yeah, what was my conclusion in my script? I feel like it was very, very well articulated, and I don't feel like I'm being very articulate right now. Yeah, I said a lot of this stuff. The Victor's loving family stands in contrast with the creature's abandonment and solitude. How could Victor ever understand the creature's pain when he has never been so unloved, so alone? But a happy childhood isn't very gothic, so Del Toro is like, no, we're gonna have an abusive, evil father, no other family, because that's, like, austere and gothic. Victor's solitary pursuit and his, like, obsession with, like, science and whatever, as opposed to the big group project, again, the book is about Victor and the monster, and everything else is incidental. Everything else is, like, pulled into the gravity of what's going on with that. In the book, or excuse me, in the film, we have the group team effort of making the monster, because we've got funding for this. I didn't even talk about Christoph Waltz's, like, the father's motivations for funding this, which are treated as a big reveal, and I don't understand why that needed to be a reveal, because clearly somebody funding this kind of research is going to have personal motivations. He has syphilis, and so he's like, I need you to figure this out so I can have a new body. And then they, like, struggle, and then he dies, dressed as Victor is about to succeed in animating him. So it's like, okay, like, I'm not surprised, or I don't know what this is doing, like, for the theme. I don't know why we needed this. So, if Mary Shelley's book had been so simple, if the villainy had been assigned so nakedly, it would not have stood the test of time nearly so well. It would be remembered for being the first, but not the best. Yeah, my script did have some bangers, but yeah. Oh yeah, this one's pretty good. Let me just read this to you. I'm proud of this one. Mary Shelley's book paints Victor as a selfish and spoiled young man who has failed to own his mistakes, has failed to take responsibility for his actions, for his creation, and who, to the bitter end, could not conceive of anyone experiencing greater misery than he. Rather than being nurtured and loved by like his creator, the creature is rejected, abandoned. And yet he demonstrates a much greater capacity to feel, to understand, and to love things outside of himself. Victor has good looks and is treated as a good man. The creature is monstrous to behold and is treated monstrously. Victor is obsessed with life in the abstract, to the point of succeeding in animating dead flesh. But Victor has no interest in the reality of life. In fact, he is horrified by it. In the end, Victor feels guilty over having made the creature and thus unleashing violence on the world, but he has no remorse for the creature's wretched life. He does not hold himself responsible for having abandoned him, never considers that things might have been very different if he'd showed the creature any kind of kindness or regard or empathy. The creature is given the final word in the book. It is the creature who, though monstrous in both appearance and deed, demonstrates a capacity for remorse over what he has wrought. He blames and hates himself for destroying innocence and beauty. Victor and the creature each lay claim to being the most wretched, that no one has ever suffered as much as he. Though it is no competition, the reader is left with the discomfort of knowing how horrible the deeds of the creature are, and yet how understandable the source of the pain and rage that prompted them. Meanwhile, the inaction of Victor is less horrible in itself, and yet is far more callous, thoughtless, and unfeeling. The creature has done monstrous things, but Victor is monstrous. The film, by contrast, is about a big bad evil scientist man who abused the creature he created, tried to kill it, then accidentally killed the pretty lady that loved the creature, and ultimately died because he was determined to finish off the creature that he'd failed to kill the first time. The monster is an innocent who suffered at the hands of those who were horrified by his appearance, and he blames Victor for his loneliness. So I suppose if any lesson is to be gleaned, any idea intended to be planted in the viewer's mind, it's that being mean to ugly things is bad. Oh yeah, I compared this to Wuthering Heights too. I said Del Toro's Frankenstein commits the same sin that every retelling of Wuthering Heights commits. It allows the sympathy that one feels for the plight of the man who is treated so monstrously that he cannot do otherwise than become a monster to fuel a need to paint them in a better light, to show them, in adaptation or retelling, the kindness they are denied in their original tale. Yeah, I tried to say that earlier, but that was way better. Anyway, if you haven't seen the film, it is gorgeous. If you haven't read Frankenstein, it is incredible. I recommend doing both and forming your own opinion. But that has got to be it. This video is probably insanely long. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you forgive the more casual nature of it. And yeah. Bye.